Welcome to the Pushing Through Loss podcast. I'm your host, Kalila Green Siciliano. In this weekly podcast, we're here to offer support, understanding, and hope to those who have experienced the pain of pregnancy loss. We'll share stories, insights, and expert advice to help you find your inner strength warrior. Let's begin this journey together. Welcome back to Pushing Through Loss. I'm your host, Kalila. And today I have an amazing guest with me. Her name is Jennifer, who has experienced her own loss that, as I was looking through your story, I was just so blown away by and so touched with what you've created. And I'm really excited to have you on because it's just, as I always say, miscarriage and pregnancy loss and infant death is such an important topic for all of us to talk about, to understand that we're all in this together and that it does affect everybody. But to hear everybody's individual stories is so important. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with you. And I agree. I love that you have this podcast and, other podcasts focus on not being alone, not feeling alone during this experience. It can be so lonely and isolating.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially because it's not something people want to share for some reason, whatever that reason is, but to make it feel like you can share and to make it feel like if you do need to tell somebody, you've got somebody to talk to or just to listen to.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
tell me a little bit about your story just from the start of
Mm.
where you started in your pregnancy and what happened.
Yeah, so I my husband and I had two little boys. They were very busy. They were 3 and 5, and we wanted to have one more, of course, maybe hoping for a girl, but of course it didn't matter. So I became pregnant and we went in for the sonogram, and I knew, just not that I'm an expert, but I knew just from looking at the screen that there was something definitely different than the first two and that there were more there. And
It's always a little
sure,
bit of a shock.
yes. So sure enough, they announced that we were expecting twins, and I went right out to the car and I cried because I was really totally fine with the thought of having one more baby, but two kind of seemed overwhelming at the time. And so pregnancy progressed. Everything seemed to be fine. We got to 32 weeks, and I I remember it was Halloween, and we had been out with the night before trick-or-treating with the boys, and all of a sudden the next day I was like, gosh, there's no movement. And by that time, especially with twins, you knew there. I mean, I even knew their personalities at this point.
Right. There's not much
This
room in
one,
there.
yeah, this one on this side slept during these hours. This one here was a little more active. There was such a connection, as there is in every pregnancy. But definitely by then, I had been to the doctor on the Tuesday before, and he told me I had a textbook pregnancy of twins. So
And you're
I was
like,
resting
great, this is
easy.
amazing.
Oh yeah, I was resting easy. I was
Right.
feeling good. Everything was great. So naturally, super alarmed, called my doctor. They did the whole, drink the orange juice, all that kind of
Right. Lie
stuff.
on your
I,
side,
I
could do the count kicks.
I just knew. I just knew. But went in, had the sonogram there. They didn't really dare to quite say it, but
Ugh.
they were concerned. So why don't you drive yourself to the hot? I mean, sometimes when you repeat these things, you're like, did that happen? Why don't you
Right. Like,
drive
how did
yourself?
I do that?
Yeah, how do we do? Because we're amazing. We're women are amazing creatures.
Amen.
um I drove myself to the hospital. Now my husband worked in the emergency department at the hospital. He happened to be at work that day, so luckily he could meet me there to get the final diagnosis that there were no heartbeats in either one. They were identical, and they shared a blood supply. So once something happened to one, which it turned out to be a knot in the cord, that
Wow.
simple. So once one lost its blood supply, it instantly transferred to the other. And there
Wow.
we were at 29 years old. I was planning a funeral and I was
And not just for one baby, but for two.
right. It did seem like everything was magnified double. They came in and told me, and I just remember feeling sort of like a 4-year-old temper tantrum, like, I don't want to do this. I
Right.
don't want to have to see them. I don't want to hold them. I don't want to go through this. I don't want to leave the hospital with nothing. And it turns out we did see them. We do have pictures. We did say goodbye. We all of the things. And we did have the funeral, and it was just at the end of it, you just are left with such an out of body experience that you don't know what to do. Now, my
Right.
mother also lost a full term baby before I was born.
Wow.
So she did understand, but there was not, even so, there was not a lot of, she did always talk about it. We always knew about it, but it's just one of those things that you are generationally taught to not talk about, and you just have to get over it because it happened. People will tell you it happens to so many women,
Right.
but why? Yeah,
Right.
why
And
is
you can have more and all the things that
right?
people say
All
that
of
you're
the
like, what?
things that pacify, yeah, all of those things. So anyways, we yeah, what I wanted at that time more than anything, and what I appreciated, were the people who came out of the woodwork to say, "Oh, this happened to me too."
Wow.
And there were so many you would have never known. I was because I had the boys, I was in different mothers groups and things
Mm,
like that. Several of those women came forward. I had no idea, of course,
right.
that this had ever happened, and told me some incredible stories, and I clung to those. That's what I wanted.
Mm,
Is I wanted my husband was wonderful, my friends were wonderful, my family, my mom, I was even cautious about talking about it with her because I didn't want to bring it up more with her,
right.
but it what I really found comfort in were the other women that had lived through it.
Mm,
In my eyes, I'm like, okay, they've lived through it.
right.
They've
They know
somehow
exactly where I am.
they've survived it. They've felt what I'm feeling, and they have lived through it. So, in those, it's been 23 years. And in those days, there was no social media, there were no cell phones, there were no outlets except whoever happened to show up at your door or wherever
Right.
you were. And I did try going to therapy. My therapist had not experienced it, so I found it very unhelpful.
Ugh.
Um, I mean, you can only digest and pick apart so many things, and it's
Yeah.
just, at the end of the day, the people who were bringing me comfort were the ones who had been through it.
Right.
So that's why I went on to create what I created. Then um I stuffed it down as far as I possibly could. I had another baby. I had my daughter. Everything was wonderful. Everybody was like, "Phew, okay, she's good now,
Right.
right?
And it's almost
Everything's
like it's
better."
over and done with. We don't have
Yeah,
to talk about
okay.
it.
Okay, she's good. Everything's
Right.
great now. So I did. I stuffed it down as hard as I possibly could
Uh,
until my baby got on the school bus. I had, that was very triggering. And I had a business, and I went to a business conference where they did vision boarding the first day. And I remember sitting there watching everyone else excitedly create these, all these dreams for the future. And I realized, no, I can't do this. You can't, how do
wow.
you know what's going to happen?
Right.
How would you know how do you dare plan for that, and the
Right.
disappointment that comes if that doesn't come true?
Right. Especially because you
Eh,
were so close to being able to have exactly what you wanted and
so
then it was taken
close.
away from you.
Right. I knew better. I felt like I knew better than any of them sitting in that room,
Right.
that, it's great. You can dream about what you want, but it doesn't mean it's going to actually happen.
Right.
And it was about 10 years in when I realized that. I
Mhm.
realized, okay,
You're not over this.
this is not, yeah, I certainly have unprocessed grief. There happened to be a life coach at that event, who talked me through it, and I had some really big realizations about what kind of impact this loss had on me,
Mhm.
even that many years later. Even though I had tried to hide it, I tried to stuff it down, I try to just keep going because that's what we're taught to do,
Right.
and
Right.
that's what
And
society
you
wants
have a
to do.
daughter,
I love yes, she's the joy of my life, but it
but you're
just
still missing two babies.
still missing. Yeah, still missing. So, so that inspired me to, really I loved the life coaching approach versus therapy,
Mhm.
to this tragedy, because you can't go back and try to figure out what happened. There's no answers.
Nope.
But what you can do is take what has happened, try to find the meaning in it. There is meaning in it. It takes a long time. I'm not
Yep.
here to say, oh, just, it's going to be all rosy and you're just going to be so glad it happened. Never will I say that. Never.
No, no.
But
And the grief will always be there, but in a different way.
yeah, and you can channel it different. And I also wanted to create a place for women to not feel alone, to feel like they have someone who's been through it, to
Mhm.
have someone who understands at that granular level what this experience is like.
Yeah.
So,
It it really is something that unless you've been through it, you can't understand it. I remember when I was pregnant with my third, my best friend from childhood, um, her and her partner were also expecting, and they lost the baby 5 days before the due date. And I had never been through a miscarriage at that point. I don't even think I knew anybody who had gone through such a traumatic experience. And I tried to be there for them as best as I could. But I remember after I went through my own loss that I texted her and I said, after I've gone through this now, and I was like sobbing as I'm writing this, I said,
mhm,
I hope that I could be there for you in the way that you need it because I know
mhm,
now that it was so different than what I expected.
mhm,
And like even going to my therapist, thank
yeah,
God he was somebody who his wife had lost the baby at 32 weeks as well. And so he knew exactly what shoes I was walking in.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super valuable. Yeah,
One thing
'cause
I did want
you
to
don't
ask you
know.
because I know how I explained it to my kids, but because your kids were
Mm.
about the same age as my youngest when it happened, how did they deal with it in terms of understanding? I mean, they saw your belly growing, they knew that there was babies in there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, my oldest was 5, in kindergarten, and I know, it's one of those things. It was such a blur because I was in the hospital. I had to have a cesarean, so I was
Mm,
there an extended period of time. The kids were too young to come and visit the hospital,
mm.
and so
So
my
it's not even
husband,
like they
poor
really got a
husband.
chance to even meet the babies
No,
either.
no, no. Um, yeah, so my husband had the task of doing all of those things,
Wow.
and so yeah, I don't even really know, except that they were at the funeral with us. My oldest drew a little picture to put in with
Aw.
them. He was definitely the most affected by it.
Mm.
And it probably has a little bit of a memory of it for sure, but gosh, it makes me emotional just thinking about it again. Yeah, it still
It
comes
never
up.
goes away.
It never goes away. So yeah, and my youngest was pretty oblivious. He didn't really, either or.
Mm.
But I would go, his teacher would tell me things,
Oh,
that he would
interesting.
say and do at school. And we always talked about it through the
Mm-hmm.
years. And just like my mom did, really,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about it. There would be different times throughout their growing up that they would say, well, I wonder what they'd be doing, or I wonder,
Aw.
where they would be, or what college would they go to, or what,
Right.
different things like that. Definitely those milestones are still there. And
Yeah.
you still think about it all through the years of different birthdays and graduations and things like that. My middle son just got married last weekend,
Oh,
and you
congratulations.
things, and you can't help but think,
Like, what if they
what
were here?
role would they have? And yeah,
Right.
different. It's always a part of you.
Yeah. Do you do something on a yearly basis to commemorate their birthday?
I don't, because my husband and so my baby, my rainbow baby, was born on my husband's birthday. And
Aw.
it is 3 days before the twins'
Oh, wow.
anniversary date.
That's a lot
Yes.
to process at one time.
So it's a lot. So we really focus on celebrating her and their
Right.
birthdays. It certainly doesn't go unnoticed.
Okay.
I always have anxiety the week or two leading up to it.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. And I encourage people to do that. If I think it's so personal. Everything
100%.
is so personal, and the things that you do. One thing I always do is for Memorial Day, I will buy plant some
Aw.
flowers. I'll put them at the cemetery for Memorial Weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the past, the first couple years, I left them there, busy with kids, forgot to go water them. They died. It was awful. I was like, oh
Right.
my gosh, here we go.
Right.
So what I do now is I go and I pick them up after Memorial Weekend, and I bring it home and I plant it, and I enjoy it all summer long.
Oh, that's so lovely.
So they're there,
Right.
they're in so many crevices of our lives that I
Mm-hmm.
really don't focus on that day.
Okay.
But I focus on kind of celebrating in little, maybe even unknown ways to everyone else, but to
But it's
me, that
personal.
it's special. It is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so different for everyone.
And I think that's going back to what we said at the beginning. That's exactly why I started this podcast, because there's so much that you think, well, is this normal? Is this not normal? Like, am I doing something that people are going to look at me and think, what in the world is she thinking? Or what is she doing? But there is no normal. It's whatever is working for you.
Yes. And I think, I don't know if this comes with age or experience too, but people are going to judge you anyways.
For sure. And
You're
I think at the point, like you said, with age, like who cares what other people are going to think?
No, you're
But
either grieving too much or you're not grieving
right,
enough. I mean, you can be accused of either way with
right,
that. And you can be, too, oh, I wish they wouldn't have those pictures of that
right,
baby who died on their mantle. Or I can't believe they don't have any pictures of that
right,
baby. Must be they don't care. I mean,
right.
no matter what you do, it's going to come with judgment. So it really, and I think, luckily, I think the women that are childbearing age now are definitely more independent and definitely more willing to do what feels right for them, and
For sure.
to honor themselves,
And
which
I think
I'm
even
super
something as
happy.
simple as, like, I had a conversation with somebody who was saying that when she had her loss, this was before a lot of things were available. She used to have a weight that she had gotten from the gym that she would like hold with a teddy bear on her chest.
Oh,
And like
yes.
even something as simple as that, in your brain you're going, this is so not normal, but it is. Like your body's craving that baby weight, and
Oh,
now
yeah.
they've got the bears that you can create with the weight of the baby at birth that almost makes it tangible to say like, okay, I can hold something, I can feel it. I You might not be able to feel the warmth of a baby, but like something, this life existed.
And no one tells you about the physical aftermath of it.
Right.
No one tells you that your body's still going to produce milk,
Yep.
even though you don't have babies.
Yep.
Or that you're going to have this urge to hold a something
Mm-hmm.
because your arms are needing that. Your brain is not caught up with the fact yet that it's not happening. And
And your hormones also.
yeah, no one, I mean, no one talks about nearly as much as they should. That's
Right.
for sure.
Right. Or even the reaction that I remember the first time I saw somebody else who was very visibly pregnant after I had lost the baby, and I almost physically couldn't breathe, where I like had to leave immediately. And I thank God I was by myself. My kids were at their homeschool program and my husband was working, but I was like, I need to get out of here. I just need to go. I was talking to a salesperson. I think I dropped everything and like ran out.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, how do you know how you're going to react to these
Right.
kind of things? I remember when my twins would have been 3, I was in a Macy's bathroom. I was walking into the bathroom. Here comes this mother out, these beautiful twin girls who are about
Oh,
3. And I instantly just started sobbing. I'm
yeah.
sure they thought I was crazy,
Yeah.
but you can't help yourself. And I think that is something too that I was certainly never taught growing up. And I think most people weren't, but it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay
Totally.
for you to stand there and bawl if you have to. It's
Yep.
okay for you to run out of the store.
Yep.
It really is. And if we could get that through to these moms who are suffering these losses, that are like me, trying to, choke it down, choke it back,
Right.
just keep going, just pretend like you're good,
Right.
because that's what they want to see.
Yep.
If we could just be okay with like allowing that, they would be in such a better space.
Yeah. And it helps because when you process your emotions, it's something that you can then release in a way. Like I have a friend who teaches that all the happy emotions are very easy to process. Happiness, excitement, joy, all those things work through your body. The energy is there and the energy flows through you. All those so-called negative emotions, anger, fear, anxiety, you
Mhm.
tend to bottle them up and push them down. Like you said, you pushed it down for 10 years and it causes the energy to just sit there, and it brings more negativity. And if you can have that process of releasing it and allowing yourself to feel it and allowing those tears to come, whether they're angry tears or whether they're anxious tears or whatever it might be, get it out. Just
Yeah.
release it, because I promise in the moment it sucks, but afterwards you do feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because that is such an important point, because it will physically eat away at you.
Yeah.
Because 10 years after, right about this time when I kind of was figuring things out a little bit,
Mm.
I had a hysterectomy,
Oh, wow.
and I had to have a bowel resection. And I
Wow.
think that was grief.
Yeah.
Now that I know what I know, I look back and I'm like, that was grief eating
Yeah.
away at me. I
Yeah.
had
It's
I had stuffed it down so far, I had nowhere to go but to start
physical manifestations.
internally. Yeah.
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 Oh,
It's
that
so
sucks.
dangerous. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to get that out.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about then what you created once you had that revelation and you said, I
Mm.
gotta, not only do I have to help myself, I have to help others.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those things. I remember thinking in the very beginning after my loss, I remember thinking, because I just appreciated so much the ones that did come forward. And I remember thinking, I wish I could find a way to help people. I wish I could find a way to help people through this. But I just didn't know. I didn't really know until that experience, and until that life coach showed up in my life and started helping me. And then I just thought, yeah, this is it. This
Mm.
is this is what I need to do, and this is my calling. So I got my life coach certification, and um I actually recently just got certified in NLP and timeline therapy,
Oh,
which I
wow.
think is really helpful too. The timeline therapy can clear so many of those negative emotions that
Mhm.
that come from so many different areas of your life, maybe even
Right.
generational. And so that's super helpful. So I just started really learning different modalities of things and going back to what were the things that helped me? What were
Mhm.
the things that I could tell myself, or to turn that thinking around
Mhm.
when it starts to get to you, because it's going to.
Right.
I mean, it did at my son's wedding. It just
Mm.
there are hard times
Right.
throughout your whole life when it shows back up. So if you can learn some strategies to start turning that around,
Yes.
oh, it makes all the difference in
Yes.
every area of your life.
Mhm.
Because I mean, it takes a toll on your relationship and your friendships, and it can affect you bonding with your children and your
Mhm.
future children if you
Yeah.
don't get it resolved.
Yeah. It's one of those where I think if you like you said, the strategies are what's important because this will always
Mm.
be with you. And that's
Yeah.
another thing people don't talk about. People never tell you that years down the road, it's still there. However, it's processing it differently. And
Yeah.
like you said, even to the effect that like at your son's wedding, yeah, there was grief there because your daughters weren't there, but at the same time, you knew how to process it. And it's not like you
Mhm.
were sitting in the corner crying all night. I'm sure you had a fantastic time and you were celebrating your son,
Yeah.
but it was there. It was in the back of your head.
It's just there. Yeah. It's like this little thing that's always with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't have to always be devastating or depressing, but just knowing it's there and knowing like, okay, but here's what I know about this situation.
Right.
And here's what I can say to myself to get back out of it, or whatever it is,
Right.
because so many times I think if you don't go through some sort of process to release the guilt, there's so much guilt in
Hmm.
loss that moms carry. If you don't release the guilt, if you don't
Right. If
release
only I
the
had, if, what
anger,
if, or all those
yeah,
questions.
yeah, or maybe you have that fear that you don't want to have another child because you're
Right.
too afraid of what could happen. If you don't release that, it's not going away. And
Right.
you have to find a way
Right.
to be able to take yourself back down from that, because it's going to come up. But how
Yeah.
do you take yourself back out?
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the process of what you do with somebody who comes to you for help.
Hmm. Yeah, usually when we first start, I have a questionnaire. I like to know about all areas, because I think it touches on so many different areas of your life,
Hmm.
and which ones are the ones that are really going to be helpful for
Hmm.
you to resolve first. And then we just started going to work on those with whatever methods are needed.
Hmm.
But lots of times I think for me it's creating mantras, even
Right.
things that you can instantly take yourself out, that can, like,
Hmm.
once you feel that temperature rising in that situation, or you feel it because you feel it in your body
Yeah.
somewhere usually. And how to, like, take that out as quick as you can. So yeah, it's usually with me, it's like it can be anywhere between I like to do 3 months with someone
Hmm.
in the beginning. I like to do 3 months. We meet weekly,
Hmm.
and just I teach them some strategies, and then
Hmm.
they can put it into practice, because
Hmm.
chances are within a week, there's gonna be an opportunity for you to practice the strategy. And then
100%.
the next time we get together, we assess it, see how that worked, and then can continue
Yeah.
building on that foundation that usually is going to be rooting yourself back into self-confidence, trusting your body again, trusting yourself, reconnecting with your partner. That's
Hmm.
so important, because that is very often a tragedy of this kind of loss.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just work on a lot of those basic foundations of yourself and then build on them. And
That's amazing.
how can you take yourself out of that situation
Right.
quick?
Yeah. It's so interesting because I've never been one for meditation. I've never been one for yoga. My best friend and I used to we're not across the country from each other, but when we lived almost next door to each other, we would exercise like every single morning and she'd be like, "Let's do yoga." And I'm like, "Let's not. Can we please find something else to do?" And so I know that for other people, yoga and meditation work can be life changing. But for me, whenever somebody would be like, you have to practice meditating, I'm like, I don't, okay. And then what? Like, what happens? So what I found personally is a specific breath technique that helped so much. And I've done it where I felt anxious. I've done it when I'm going back to the hospital where the baby was born. I do it all of those situations and it's so simple to learn. And I never thought of myself as somebody who'd be like, yes, I can do breath work. Like that's so
Right.
far into me, but now it's something I do all the time.
That's so good. Yes. It's simple, isn't it? It's just,
Yeah,
it's honestly, it's the simplest things.
it really
It's
is. And it's like you said, the
basic.
mantra, just to tell
Yeah.
yourself that one sentence or the phrase that you can find that resonates with you.
And I'll give you my mantra that got me out of
Sure.
a lot of it was, it wasn't my fault. I did the best I could.
Yep.
Those two I had to keep going back to whenever I started to feel like, like, oh, well, you should have done this. Why didn't you go to that specialty doctor? And you should have. I did the best I could.
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
And it's something so simple,
Yep.
but it's just finding that thing
Yep.
you might need a little help with.
Yeah.
And like you said, being taught that breath work, it just, once you have some of these skills, you can change so many situations.
It's so true. It's so funny that you use those two phrases because those I think about, but I'm like, it doesn't work for me because I always think it's my fault, no matter what it is. And so even if I say it, I don't always believe it. So
Mm,
mine is it's okay to not be okay, and loss is
mhm.
beyond your control.
Oh, I like it.
Because I don't know. I
That's good.
if I start questioning, I'm like, but what if? And what if I eat this? And what if I didn't do that? And what if I did do this? And it makes you go crazy.
You
So if
can
I say it's not your fault, I'll start questioning all of those things. But if it
mm,
works for you,
that's
amazing.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing because it is, again, it's so personalized.
Right.
Every bit of it is so
Right.
different.
Right. And you really have to find words that sound like something you would say. If you're taking somebody else's words, it's
Yeah,
not going to fit
yeah,
with
if you don't
you.
believe it, it's not
Right.
ever gonna happen. But
Right.
yeah, what are some things that you can believe? And
Right.
it might even just be like, I survived it.
Yeah.
It might even just be that.
Yeah. I'm still
Which
here.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
I survived the worst thing anyone can imagine.
Yep. It's true.
Yeah.
I feel like I have so many more questions for you, and I would love to continue talking to you for hours.
Aw.
Um, but tell people where they can find you, and if they do need support, what they can do. Like, what's the
Mhm.
first step you would tell someone after they've had a miscarriage or a pregnancy loss?
Ooh, the first step, I think my very best advice is to keep your circle small.
Hmm.
That's the first step. Gather your people, the ones
Create
that are
your
going to
village.
listen. Tell them that you don't want them to fix you, you just want them to listen.
Yeah.
That's my very first piece of advice. The second thing is to find someone who's been through it that can help you, that can
Hmm.
give you real tactical, practical advice,
Hmm.
not old wives' tales, not things that their great Aunt Mildred told them. That's
Right.
probably outdated and not
Right.
true.
Right. And also will make you feel 100% worse that you've heard this.
So horrible. Yeah. And but you can find me at on my website at jennifersenn.com. I have my own podcast is Navigating Baby Loss. And so I am on all social media channels as Navigating Baby Loss also. So
Amazing. It's such a perfect title
thank you.
because it
Yes.
really is. It's navigating that storm of figuring out now what.
It's not overcoming it. It's not making peace with it. It's
Yeah.
navigating it because that's
Yeah.
what you do for the rest of your life. You
Yep.
navigate it.
Yeah, that's why
So
I think that's why I resonated with pushing through loss because I said it one time to somebody and they were
love
like, "Why
that.
did you say pushing?" And I said, "Because it's so resonating for me in terms of the idea of labor and birth that you never got to have, and the
Yes.
loss is always going to be there." So I love
Yeah.
that people like you and I have found these little words that just make it so much more
It makes it real.
meaningful and real
Yeah.
and all of that.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be here and I loved this conversation. I feel the same way. I'm sure we could talk for hours, but
Totally. I also love the fact that even through pain, number one, like the connections I've made because of
mm,
this loss has been beyond anything I could have imagined, but also to be able to laugh through some of it because you can't just hold it in grief all the time. And there are silly, stupid, humorous moments that in the moment you're thinking, "Oh my God, this is awful." But then you look back on it and you're like, you gotta laugh because what else are you gonna do?
well, and the fact that that laughter equals healing. Because
Yeah.
remember the time when you thought, I will never smile or laugh ever again in my
Yes.
whole life. That's it.
I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's not true. There is healing, even so that you can laugh again, which I think is
Totally.
so comforting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so, so much. This has been
You
a joy and a pleasure and I can't wait to see what else you're doing for people because I think what you have is so incredible.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me today on Pushing Through Loss. I hope this episode has provided support, understanding, and a sense of community for those who've experienced pregnancy loss. Remember, you are not alone in your journey, and there is strength within you to face the challenges that come your way. If you found value in today's episode, please consider sharing it with others who may benefit. Together, we can help each other heal and activate our inner strength warriors. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations, and until next time, you got this.